Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today the star of the show is a Pflueger President. It's a 40 size reel. The model is the 6740. These are nice reels. Now this one came in from Kevin, and it came in because it had a bail that wasn't functioning properly, and I took care to repair that. But I thought while I was at it, I'll show you how to tune up the entire reel and how to get this one back to Kevin so that it has a second chance to go fishing. I'm not sure of the year of this one, and the reason why I'm not sure of it is it has a wooden handle, and it's kind of odd to find wooden handles these days. At one point there was all kinds of issues going on with using rosewood and tropical woods and the like for handles, and well, that may be an indication of when those things became kind of hard to find. Well, we're going to take the exterior pieces and parts off. I started with the spool and the handle, and as I continue I want to encourage you to use the notification buttons if you're a subscriber, so that you can see how to watch the videos that I do post and when they come up. And if you're not a subscriber, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to the channel as well. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm cleaning the spool. It has some residual stuff on there, possibly salt residue, and it had the line off of it, which is a good thing. And I'm using Penn's Rod and Reel Cleaner just to get that old stuff off and kind of put a little shine on there. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. It's a cleaner. You can see the dirt that came off that. And I'm going to put a little shine on there and make it pretty, you know. All right, we'll come back and we'll do the drags inside this reel in a little bit. Right now we're going to do the internals. This reel, if you look at it, it does not have a break in the case here, which means that we have to take the rotor off in order to service the internals. So we want to start by removing this stack. The first piece on the stack is actually a washer that's a shim washer that will control the height of the spool line, and that's followed by a metal washer. And this is a good place to tell you to take pictures along the way if you're unfamiliar with the reel that you're working on. And the reason for that is you want to make sure that you have no problems when you put the reel back together. And if you do have a problem, it's a great reference point for you to go back and check what it was you did, where it came from, and well, how to recover from your lapse of memory. Next up then, we're going to take the little tie-down screw off, and then we're going to take the nut off. I'm not quite sure what nut that is. All right, there you go. And this nut comes off in a traditional counterclockwise manner. Notice under this nut there's a little tie-down. It's a bushing that fits inside of the pinion gear, right? So now it's got a big wobble to it. So if you didn't put that bushing back in there, well, you'd have a very wobbly reel. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, so this should come off now. Just kind of rock it to bring it up. Make sure that it's clean inside. While you have the spool in your hand, you can put a drop of oil into that Z-bar, which is going to be the trip lever. You can take your oil and oil the seams of the bail. You do not need to take the bail apart. This came out. It came off the bottom of that. That's a bearing shield washer. Just make sure that you recognize where that goes. It would go on top here. Well, now we have 3 screws that are holding on the pinion gear assembly, and we also have access to the lower case. So I like to do the lower case first. I'm going to use a micro screwdriver to get this first screw out, which is holding the bump guard. While I take the pieces and parts off, they all go in my parts tray so that I know where to find them when it's time to reassemble the reel. We should be able to lift this bump guard out now. And I'm thinking that this screw here may be having an attach, so I don't want to pry or press anything if that doesn't just come right out. A lot of times these cases and case screws serve multiple purposes, so be aware of that. One of the ways to confirm that would be to go get a schematic of this reel. Now, I didn't go do that. Yeah, there was a there we go. So you can see that there was a tag end here where that screw went through, and if you tried to pull it, not knowing that that screw was holding it, well, you would have broken your bump guard. When I take the screws out, I try to lay them on my table. I want to make sure that they're all the same size. Same size, same shape, same thread, and the like. And I'm noticing that the one on the bottom here is not. The one on the bottom is a flathead screw as opposed to the rounded head. That probably because it's embedded behind that bump guard. And when you take these off, you want to just mark the location if there is an odd screw like that one. We should be able to remove the side case now. It's a nice metal piece. These Pflueger President reels are very nice reels. I'm going to bring the assembly for the axle shaft down. Sometimes this main gear will come right out. It did in this case. Sometimes it won't, so if it's not coming out, it's because it's blocked by that axle shaft, and you need to remove the axle shaft in order to get there. Okay, we're going to take the screw that belongs in the crosswind block out. Now we can remove the axle shaft, the crosswind block, and the crosswind gear. And my big finger's having a little trouble with that, so we'll take it out that way. Notice underneath that we have a bearing there. That just kind of speaks to the quality of this reel. It's very high quality reel. Shakespeare actually owned the President name, and when Shakespeare bought Pflueger, they transferred the Pflueger name over, or the President model over to Pflueger. Let me put that in the back there, put the axle shaft in here. I'm just going to leave these 3 gear sets over on my desk for a moment, just because I want to come up top and service the pinion gear next. When you service a reel, you want to do a few things. You want to take the reel apart. You want to examine the pieces and parts that are in the reel, make sure that there's no damage. And if you find that there's a broken part, well, you're going to have to replace that. And then you want to clean the reel of all the old greases. And once that is done, then you can go back in and oil and re-lube and set it apart. Notice that there is a spring here. That spring controls the anti-reverse override. And sometimes when you pull all this stuff out, well, that spring is going to come out too. So just be aware of it. Yep, that's going to come out. It has to come out. So what I do is I like to hold that spring, remove it, and then we should be able to pull the whole assembly up. Notice that the assembly has got a lot of pieces and parts in it. Move that over to the side for a moment. And you're going to need to know the order when you go to reinstall. So take a picture here. Use your cell phone camera. Use your standard digital camera. Use a video camera if you like. But regardless, you need to know that that belongs there. And it's important in the progression of how this reel comes together and comes apart. We have a collar and a bearing in it. We can oil that. I choose to oil bearings rather than to use grease. We have our anti-reverse setup, and we have a bearing on the bottom. This reel is very clean. If you find that, well, you got old greases and the like in here, by all means, you want to clean that up. In this case, there's no grease, it's run dry. And there's one little piece of grease there. What you want to do is just make sure all the channels are clean, that the teeth are uniform, that there's no chips or cracks or obvious bends that would make the performance impaired. And then we're going to use fishing reel grease. I use Penn Precision Reel Grease for this. I'm going to go ahead and re-grease. Okay, we left that bottom bearing in. This is the top of our anti-reverse assembly. That has a collar on it. And we have the carrier and the bearing. And it's important to note what was the top on this. Well, this was the top. There's an indentation on the bottom. That's because your collar sticks out. And you want to make sure that that seats properly. When you go to put this back in, you kind of need to aim the assembly. There's two sides to this that fit in a slot. And then we have this carrier and that spring that we were talking about here. And again, be careful with these springs. They're very small springs. They tend to shoot. And well, then you go play hide and seek. Once you've reinstalled that spring, if it came off, as it did with me, go ahead and put the plate back on. It's going to hold that bearing assembly in place. Now there's a stud. It needs to mount over the stud in this small hole on this assembly. Then we have 3 screws. And those of you that know me and small screws probably are thinking about going for a glass of your favorite beverage at the moment. If you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, or maybe you just want to learn more about a particular reel, if you leave that in the comments section, I'll try and answer that question for you if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll try and point you. Somebody left a comment today about what parts are interchangeable on a Penn Battle 1000 and 2000. Well, I kind of learned something from that. I went in there and that seems to be everybody's leftover parts reels. There's parts coming from all kinds of Penn reels, Sarguses and conflicts and all kinds that changed up. All right, what you see me doing now is I am kind of hitting this crosswind gear from all sides. That's because everything has got to play in it. Behind is going to ride on that bearing. You want to make sure that you're nice smooth ride there. The gears are going to ride with the back side of this main gear. Right here, this one. And the crosswind block is going to ride on the front of it. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and get all sides of the crosswind gear lubed up. Just put the bearing back in. I think there's a little spacer washer here that's probably going to have to go in ahead of that crosswind gear. I'm just not sure. Let's see if it blocks the teeth. No, it doesn't block the teeth. We should be okay with that. All right, make sure that your main gear is cleaned. I'm going to use a cotton swab. As I mentioned, this is a reel that's obviously been sitting for a while, and I believe that the lubrication is just evaporated. But regardless, one of the things about the servicing of a reel is you want to make sure you get all fresh greases and that in there. Okay, you want to do the front and the back side, and where those pieces are going to go into the bearings. So we've done a pretty good job there. One more I want to do here. I want to do this crosswind block, and then we'll go about the installation. We'll take a look at the drag system up top. From what I'm looking at this reel, it hasn't been used much, so my guess is that there's not a lot going on with the drags, but that's only a guess. All right, let's put the main gear in then. See if we can clear that. I don't think we can, so we want to take this shim washer off. That would have been easier to do before I took to greasing that whole thing. There we go. You want to position that behind that crosswind here and over the bearing slot, just like that. All right, now we should be able to put this in. There you go, much easier that way. And now we want to bring the axle shaft down. And okay, I needed to pause the video for a moment there to take a phone call, so hopefully I'm somewhere in the area of where I was, and that was with reinstalling the axle shaft. Now remember, when you install the axle shaft, there were those little bushings, one top, one bottom. They have to go in before you can do that. So now we can bring that in and seat that into our crosswind block below. And when you seat that into the crosswind block, make sure that the hole in the axle shaft aligns with the hole in the crosswind block, and then go get that little screw that holds both of those in. We can tighten that up, and we can close the lower case up. Remember, we've oiled this already, the bearing, so now the lower case can come on. Remember, with our case screws, there's one that's different, so you don't want to forget which one that is. And this is a good time to do that one screw on the bottom, and then install that bump guard before you put the other screws in, because we know that the bump guard has got that little loop on it that's going to go in this one. So line that up and put that loop in first. There you go, make sure it seats easily. And then go ahead and put that one on. And I usually like a cross pattern. So when I go to tighten a screw on one side, I like to come back and put the opposing screw on the other side. And that enables me to keep the torsion on the case equal. Sometimes if you put them in a circle, you're going to find out that you get a case bind in the end, and then everything runs tight, and the reel becomes problematic. I get a lot of questions sometimes on that. Folks ask me, I took the reel apart, I did service, followed your videos, and now the reel doesn't run smooth. Why is that? Alright, so we're up top now. Before we put the rotor on, we mentioned that we have that little bearing shield washer there. Now we can put the rotor back on. Remember, there's two flat sides to that rotor, so when you go ahead and do this, you have to align those. Now we have a nut cap. This is one you can't over tighten, and I give a lot of credit to the manufacturers that do that. Sometimes I find reels that come in, they're so tight, and the rotor nut that was holding the pinion gear on was way over tightened. Alright, give it a spin. Well, it's spinning beautifully. Alright, now we got our click ratchet that's going to make the noise when your drag is letting out. Then we have the assembly that has the bearing on it. Then we have the metal washer. And we have the spool height adjuster washer. And that should be all the parts in the tray. These are tight fit, so you have to use a little bit of leverage to get it going, and then it'll snug up. So that's your stack there. Click ratchet, bearing carrier, bearing, metal washer, and then your spool adjuster. Alright, we want to take one look at the drag washers in this one. This is held on by a top cap assembly. There's 4 screws to it, so you want to take the 4 screws out. And again, I'm just going to put them on my desk because, well, this is the last piece of it here. When you're doing a service on a reel, you should go in and service your drag washers, particularly if it is a top drag assembly like this one is. Top drag assemblies take all of the water that's associated with these reels. All your line coming over the top is wet and it drains down. Alright, we got 3 screws. I don't know why that 4th one isn't coming out there. It may just be... There we go. Alright, do it that way. Now we can take the drag stack out. pay attention to the order of the drags that as you take them out. And this is a good one that we decided we were going to go work on because these are felt washers. Felt washers need to be kept lubricated. And the way to do that is you put the felt washer in. That cavity's clean. If it wasn't clean, you go ahead and do that. And then you give it a healthy dose of oil, fishing reel oil. We're going to have 3 washers metal, 3 washers felt. The felt goes in first. Then the what's called the keyed washer, it's got a rectangular center, goes in. Then the eared washer is always in the middle on a 6 drag setup like this one. Then you have your top washer, which is also a keyed washer. So top and bottom on the keyed washer, and then middle washer is the eared washer. All right, we're going to take that cap, put that cap back on, put the screws in, put this back on, give it a test, and Kevin will have a beautiful reel to go take fishing again. So he gave me a series of reels, and I don't know the aging on them, other than it's been some time since they've been serviced. And we had several Abu ambassadors and a couple of spin fishing reels. So I did a video on one of his. It was the Bass Pro Shop one. It was the Gold Cup. And now we have the President. If you have the opportunity to get a President, I would highly recommend it. I think you've seen from the video, it's a quality reel, well made. The ball bearings are all in the right place, and this one's going to last a long time and be smooth for a long time to come. Okay, that's the last of our assembly to tie down. Go ahead and put this on the reel. I'm going to take our adjuster knob, put that on next. Tighten that down, make sure they all hold. There's no reason why it shouldn't hold. And then these are felt washers. So you saw what happens there. They're lubricated. If you leave them pressed like that, it's going to press all of the oil out of it, and they're going to dry quickly. So if you're not using the reel, take a couple of turns and back that pressure off. Reinstall the handle and put a drop of oil into the flex of the handle there. And time for a test. As I mentioned, that's just one beautiful reel. I really enjoy the Pflueger President series. They are nice. And as I mentioned, this came in with a broken bail. The spring was broken. Well, it's not broken any longer. So this one's ready to go fishing again. If you're a first responder and essential personnel, thank you for sticking with me here and for doing all the things that you do. To everybody out there, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.